Section 53 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Elizabeth Buchanan. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1, by Cao Xueqin. Translated by Henry Bencraft Joly. Chapter 22, Part 3. Upon listening to these words, Pao-ch'ai drew near and perceived at a glance that it consisted of a stanza of 4 lines, with 7 characters in each; but though there was no novelty or remarkable feature about it, she felt constrained to outwardly give utterance to words of praise. "It's hard to guess," she simply added, while she pretended to be plunged in thought; for the fact is that as soon as she cast her eye upon it, she had at once solved it. Pao-yü, Tai-yü, Hsiang-yün and Tan-ch'un had all 4 also hit upon the answer, and each had secretly put it in writing; and Chia Huan, Chia Lan and the others were at the same time sent for, and every one of them set to work to exert the energies of his mind; and when they arrived at a guess, they noted it down on paper, after which every individual member of the family made a choice of some object and composed a riddle, which was transcribed in a large round hand and affixed on the lantern. This done, the eunuch took his departure, and when evening drew near, he came out and delivered the commands of the imperial consort. "The conundrum," he said, "written by Her Highness the other day, has been solved by every one, with the exception of Miss Secunda and Master Tertius, who made a wrong guess. Those composed by you, young ladies, have likewise all been guessed, but Her Majesty does not know whether her solutions are right or not." While speaking, he again produced the riddles which had been written by them, among which were those which had been solved, as well as those which had not been solved; and the eunuch in like manner took the presents conferred by the imperial consort, and handed them over to those who had guessed right. To each person was assigned a bamboo vase, inscribed with verses, which had been manufactured for palace use, as well as articles of bamboo for tea, with the exception of Ying Ch'un and Chia Huan, who were the only 2 persons who did not receive any. But as Ying Ch'un looked upon the whole thing as a joke and a trifle, she did not trouble her mind on that score; but Chia Huan at once felt very disconsolate. "This one devised by Mr. Tertius," the eunuch was further heard to say, "is not properly done, and as Her Majesty herself has been unable to guess it, she commanded me to bring it back and ask Mr. Tertius what it is about." After the party had listened to these words, they all pressed forward to see what had been written. The burden of it was this: "The elder brother has horns only 8. The second brother has horns only 2. The elder brother on the bed doth sit. Inside the room, the second likes to squat." After perusal of these lines, they broke out with one voice into a loud fit of laughter, and Chia Huan had to explain to the eunuch that the one was a pillow, and the other the head of an animal. Having committed the explanation to memory and accepted a cup of tea, the eunuch took his departure, and old lady Chia, noticing in what buoyant spirits Yuan Ch'un was, felt herself so much the more elated, that issuing forthwith directions to devise, with every despatch, a small but ingenious lantern of fine texture in the shape of a screen, and put it in the hall, she bade each of her grandchildren secretly compose a conundrum, copy it out clean, and affix it on the frame of the lantern; and she had subsequently scented tea and fine fruits, as well as every kind of knick-knacks, got ready as prizes for those who guessed right. And when Chia Cheng came from court and found the old lady in such high glee, he also came over in the evening, as the season was furthermore holiday time, to avail himself of her good cheer to reap some enjoyment. In the upper part of the room seated themselves at one table dowager lady Chia, Chia Cheng and Pao-yü. Madame Wang, Pao-ch'ai, Tai-yü, Hsiang-yün sat round another table, and Ying Ch'un, Tan-ch'un and Hsi-ch'un, the 3 of them occupied a separate table. and both these tables were laid in the lower part, while below, all over the floor, stood matrons and waiting maids for Li Kung ts'ai and Hsi Feng were both seated in the inner section of the hall, at another table. Chia Chen failed to see Chia Lan, and he therefore inquired, "How is it that I don't see brother Lan?" Whereupon the female servant, standing below, hastily entered the inner room and made inquiries of widow Li. "He says," Mrs. Li stood up and rejoined with a smile, "that as your master didn't go, just then, to ask him round, he has no wish to come." And when a matron delivered the reply to Chia Cheng, the whole company exclaimed much amused, "How obstinate and perverse his natural disposition is!" But Chia Cheng lost no time in sending Chia Huan, together with two matrons, to fetch Chia Lan; and on his arrival, dowager lady Chia bade him sit by her side, and taking a handful of fruits, she gave them to him to eat; after which the party chatted, laughed and enjoyed themselves. Ordinarily, there was no one but Pao-yü to say much or talk at any length; but on this day, with Chia Cheng present, his remarks were limited to assents. And as to the rest, Hsiang yün had, though a young girl and of delicate physique, nevertheless ever been very fond of talking and discussing; but on this instance, Chia Cheng was at the feast, so that she also held her tongue and restrained her words. As for Tai-yü, she was naturally peevish and listless, and not very much inclined to indulge in conversation; while Pao-ch'ai, who had never been reckless in her words or frivolous in her deportment, likewise behaved on the present occasion in her usual dignified manner. Hence it was that this banquet, although a family party, given for the sake of relaxation, assumed contrariwise an appearance of restraint; and as old lady Chia was herself too well aware that it was to be ascribed to the presence of Chia Cheng alone, she therefore, after the wine had gone round 3 times, forthwith hurried off Chia Cheng to retire to rest. No less cognizant was Chia Cheng himself that the old lady's motives in packing him off were to afford a favourable opportunity to the young ladies and young men to enjoy themselves; and that is why, forcing a smile, he observed, "Having to day heard that your venerable ladyship had got up in here a large assortment of excellent riddles, on the occasion of the spring festival of lanterns, I too consequently prepared prizes, as well as a banquet, and came with the express purpose of joining the company; and why don't you in some way confer a fraction of the fond love, which you cherish for your grandsons and granddaughters, upon me also, your son?" "When you're here," old lady Chia replied smilingly, "they won't venture to chat or laugh; and unless you go, you'll really fill me with intense dejection; but if you feel inclined to guess conundrums, well, I'll tell you one for you to solve; but if you don't guess right, mind, you'll be mulcted." "Of course I'll submit to the penalty," Chia Cheng rejoined eagerly, as he laughed; "but if I do guess right, I must in like manner receive a reward." "This goes without saying," dowager lady Chia added; whereupon she went on to recite: "The monkey's body gently rests on the tree top." This refers, she said, to the name of a fruit. Chia Cheng was already aware that it was a lychee, but he designedly made a few guesses at random, and was fined several things; but he subsequently gave at length the right answer, and also obtained a present from her ladyship. In due course, he too set forth this conundrum for old lady Chia to guess: "Correct its body is in appearance, both firm and solid is it in substance; to words it is true, it cannot give vent, but spoken to, it always does assent." When he had done reciting it, he communicated the answer in an undertone to Pao-yü; and Pao-yü, fathoming what his intention was, gently too told his grandmother Chia; and her ladyship, finding after some reflection that there really was no mistake about it, readily remarked that it was an ink slab. "After all," Chia Cheng smiled, "your venerable ladyship it is who can hit the right answer with one guess. and turning his head round, "Be quick," he cried, "and bring the prizes and present them." Whereupon the married women and waiting maids below assented with one voice, and they simultaneously handed up the large trays and small boxes. Old lady Chia passed the things one by one under inspection, and finding that they consisted of various kinds of articles, novel and ingenious, of use and of ornament, in vogue during the lantern festival, her heart was so deeply elated that with alacrity she shouted, "Pour a glass of wine for your master." Pao-yü took hold of the decanter, while Ying Ch'un presented the cup of wine. "Look on that screen," continued dowager lady Chia. "All those riddles have been written by the young ladies, so go and guess them for my benefit." Chia Cheng signified his obedience, and rising and walking up to the front of the screen, he noticed the first riddle, which was one composed by the imperial consort Weiyuan, in this strain: "The pluck of devils to repress, in influence it abounds. Like bound silk is its frame, and like thunder its breath resounds. But one report rattles, and men are lo in fear and dread, transformed to ashes; 'tis what time to see you turn the head." "Is this a cracker?" Chia Cheng inquired. "It is," Pao-yü assented. Chia Cheng then went on to peruse that of Ying Ch'un's, which referred to an article of use: "Exhaustless is the principle of heavenly calculations, and of human skill. Skill may exist, but without proper practice the result to find hard yet will be. Whence cometh all this mixed confusion on a day so still? Simply it is because the figures yin and yang do not agree." "It's an abacus," Chia Cheng observed. "Quite so," replied Ying Ch'un, smiling; after which they also conned the one below, by Tan Ch'un, which ran thus and had something to do with an object: "This is the time when 'neath the stairs the pages their heads raise. The term of 'pure brightness' is the meetest time this thing to make. The vagrant silk it snaps, and slack without tension it strays. The east wind don't begrudge because its farewell it did take." "It would seem," Chia Cheng suggested, "as if it must be a kite?" "It is," answered Tan Ch'un; whereupon Chia Cheng read the one below, which was written by Tai-yü, to this effect, and bore upon some thing: "After the audience, his two sleeves who brings with fumes replete, both by the lute and in the quilt it lacks luck to abide. The dawn it marks, reports from cock and man renders effete. At midnight, maids no trouble have a new one to provide. The head it glows during the day as well as in the night. Its heart it burns from day to day, and 'gain from year to year. Time swiftly flies, and meet it is that we should hold it dear. Changes might come, but it defies wind, rain, days dark or bright." "Isn't this a scented stick to show the watch?" Chia Cheng inquired. "Yes," assented Pao-yü, speaking on Tai-yü's behalf; and Chia Cheng thereupon prosecuted the perusal of a conundrum, which ran as follows and referred to an object: "With the south it sits face to face, and the north the while it doth face. If the figure be sad, it also is sad; if the figure be glad, it likewise is glad." "Splendid! Splendid!" exclaimed Chia Cheng. "My guess is that it's a looking glass. It's excellently done." Pao-yü smiled. "It is a looking glass," he rejoined. "This is, however, anonymous. Whose work is it?" Chia Cheng went on to ask, and dowager lady Chia interposed: "This, I fancy, must have been composed by Pao-yü." And Chia Cheng then said not a word, but continued reading the following conundrum, which was that devised by Pao-ch'ai, on some article or other: "Eyes though it has, eyeballs it has none, and empty 'tis inside. The lotus flowers out of the water peep, and they with gladness meet. But when dryanda leaves begin to drop, They then part and divide, for a fond pair they are, but united, winter they cannot greet." When Chia Cheng finished scanning it, he gave way to reflection. "This object," he pondered, "must surely be limited in use; but for persons of tender years to indulge in all this kind of language would seem to be still less propitious; for they cannot, in my views, be any of them the sort of people to enjoy happiness and longevity." When his reflections reached this point, he felt the more dejected, and plainly betrayed a sad appearance, and all he did was to droop his head and to plunge in a brown study. But upon perceiving the frame of mind in which Chia Cheng was, dowager lady Chia arrived at the conclusion that he must be fatigued; and fearing on the other hand that if she detained him the whole party of young ladies would lack the spirit to enjoy themselves, she there and then faced Chia Cheng and suggested: "There is really no need for you to remain here any longer, and you'd better retire to rest, and let us sit a while longer, after which we too will break up." As soon as Chia Cheng caught this hint, he speedily assented several consecutive yeses; and when he had further done his best to induce old lady Chia to have a cup of wine, he eventually withdrew out of the hall. On his return to his bedroom, he could do nothing else than give way to cogitation; and as he turned this and turned that over in his mind, he got still more sad and pained. "Amuse yourselves now!" readily exclaimed dowager lady Chia, during this while, after seeing Chia Cheng off; but this remark was barely finished when she caught sight of Pao-yü run up to the lantern screen and give vent, as he gesticulated with his hands and kicked his feet about, to any criticisms that first came to his lips. "In this," he remarked, "this line isn't happy, and that one hasn't been suitably solved;" while he behaved just like a monkey whose fetters had been let loose. "Were the whole party, after all," hastily ventured Tai yü, "to sit down, as we did a short while back, and chat and laugh, wouldn't that be more in accordance with good manners?" Lady Feng thereupon egressed from the room in the inner end and interposed her remarks. "Such a being as you are," she said, "shouldn't surely be allowed by Mr. Chia Cheng an inch or a step from his side, and then you'll be all right. But just then, it slipped my memory, for why didn't I, when your father was present, instigate him to bid you compose a rhythmical enigma, and you would, I have no doubt, have been up to this moment in a state of perspiration." At these words, Pao-yü lost all patience, and laying hold of lady Feng, he hustled her about for a few moments. But old lady Chia went on for some time to bandy words with Li Kung ts'ai, with the whole company of young ladies and the rest, so that she in fact felt considerably tired and worn out; and when she heard that the fourth watch had already drawn nigh, she consequently issued directions that the eatables should be cleared away and given to the crowd of servants, and suggested as she readily rose to her feet: "Let us go and rest, for the next day is also a feast, and we must get up at an early hour, and to morrow evening we can enjoy ourselves again." Whereupon the whole company dispersed. But now, reader, listen to the sequel, given in the chapter which follows. End of section 53.